So like there's so much enthusiasm right now, like in the world I live in, of like venture capital and whatever, in like consumer internet. And you know, you're one of the few hardware. There's like Fitbit. There's a company that we're investors in called Harvest Automation in Boston. I'm sure there's WakeMate. I don't know. There's a bunch, a few others, but there's not a lot, right? I mean, I get, at least from what I see. But like, do you see a lot of interesting hardware hacking going on? And do you, you know, do you think, or is that an area that you're excited about besides 3D printing?
We're at the beginning of a really cool time with hardware, because the tools are now in the place, and the tools and the materials and the way everything works has become a lot modular and open in the past few years. So if you want to make something that, like, you know, say you're on the train and you want to wake up at, you know, your station rather than a special time, you can hook up a GPS to an alarm and an Arduino, and you can make your own contraption that will wake you up when you get to your you know, train stop. The world's like that now, where you can kind of plug things in and be modular about stuff. So it's actually an awesome time to get into hardware. And then I think until this most recent wave with like Siftio and, like you said, Fitbit and Robotics and all this kind of crew and us, we're seeing this like startup culture come into hardware, where normally this was just the realm of like the really big companies who could afford to do this kind of R&D and development. And I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see a huge amount of hardware
so this problem of, like you described before, of like the motors, you know, running out of the motors and things not, you know, having to go and specially design things, that's becoming less and less of an issue. You're saying there's more and more kind of standardization, modularization. Maybe what you're sort of describing is what happened to sort of internet startups over the last decade, right? Which is it used to cost $30 million to start, you had to run a data center and do all these other things, and now you can do it on a couple $100,000, and that's sort of created a renaissance of, I think, internet startups, and it also allowed a new class of people who maybe aren't like hyper technical or something to do stuff. I don't know. Is that sort of, I mean, are you sort of seeing similar trends in the hardware world?
I think we're kind of at the beginning of that, with just, you know, the kind of the things that are emerging now and the opportunities that are coming out, and the kind of and the community that's coming around hardware. So basically, like, the kind of stuff that's happening is like just the resources that are available for hardware startups are now available. The kind of like community around hardware startups is starting to be like, all the hardware startups, like, in order to be in the group of hardware startups, you just have to have one. And like, you're in a group of like 10 companies right now kicking butt that are all interesting. So it's an interesting time to get involved, because it's in that beginning time where you're going to know everybody in the community. If you have a hardware startup, you're going to have the same issues. You're going to be able to get help. You're going to be able to make things happen. I really want there to be more hardware in the world that is designed by small companies and made and gets big.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I would worry about, I mean, so there's the challenge with hardware, right, is one is it historically was seen as capital intensive. It just needed like a lot of money to get started. Two, there's dependencies on all these external sources of, you know, suppliers and things. You know, long lead time, so hard to do sort of like lean methodology or whatever. Difficult to protect IP, right? I mean, like, and then also, like, you see, like, look at Flip. They build an interesting thing, and then the iPhone came along and made it kind of unnecessary, right? Like, there's like a list somewhere, someone printed, of like the 27 devices the iPhone made obsolete, right? I mean, you know, maybe Fitbit's at risk of that. I don't know. You guys obviously are. I don't think there's going to be an iPhone doing 3D printing anytime soon. But you know, I think there's all sorts of. I guess you know, I think what I wrestle with is like how. So these things will change to some extent, but will it be a good place for startups to you know, to go in these sorts of.
I think if you take out if you think of it kind of traditionally, whereas it's like hardware and they have to make a product and go through traditional channels and all that kind of stuff, hardware looks pretty dismal. But if you add in the community aspect and the kind of networking effect that's available now, if you and just the ability to release a product and have a community around it, and then be able to, you know, let your community be awesome with whatever it is you produce and really support that. That takes away a lot of the kind of issues that people have around the kind of capital intensiveness of hardware. And then also just being able to iterate really quickly now. Being able, like it used to be, you'd have to spend years coming up with a product. Now you can really like, even with a MakerBot, with startups, we had, you know, we have people call us up and they're like, hey, I need this product, you know, 3D printed. Can you do it this afternoon? And we're like, yeah, why not? Bring it on over. We'll see what we can do. And then they get to hold it in their hands and see if it works. And that kind of thing, all this kind of, what I'm trying to say is like right now is like, although you can be pretty critical of hardware, and traditionally it's been really hard because of the community, the modularity, the openness. If you add that stuff into your product and are really fresh about it, then it counteracts all that kind of stress around that.
Yeah. So, and what do you think about, like, which are your favorite of these hardware? I guess maybe I'm asking you to pick amongst your good friends, but like the Siftio, which seem pretty cool, and there's Fitbit, and like, what do you think of the interesting hardware startups now? Maybe are there ones that are under the radar that?
There's a couple. So there's Fitbit, which is doing the little.
And that's part of the whole kind of quantified self movement or whatever, where people, you know, like their Google Analytics for your life or whatever, right? It's pretty cool.
I mean, I'm waiting for somebody to have an LED thing that I just wear on my wrist that like it has a camera that like looks at my vein and tells me how much blood sugar I have in there.
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen within the next 10 years.
There's an iPhone app that can tell your heart rate, and it does it by shining the flashlight on your finger and then using the camera to look at. It's really clever. I don't know.
Yeah, there's people doing water quality stuff like that too, like Water Canary, and so there's that kind of stuff which is interesting. And then there's Play, so there's like Orbotics, which has this ball that rolls around, which like a remote control ball. There's Siftio, which is kind of trying to remake the idea of gaming by having like these little blocks with stuff. There's and all these people are having to overcome all these challenges, and they're small companies that are going to be able to have products. And one of the things we haven't talked about is how great it is to have a product that is like a product, not like software product, but like it's an actual thing that you hold. And it's a really...
Why is that great? That's great. I mean, that's great from just like you feel like from a sense of completion and creation or something? Or?
Yeah, well, and your customers, when they buy something, they get something. And they're like, okay, I have something, it's in my hands, I get to... And that's it's just a powerful experience for the user to actually get something when they get something.
And so how was this thing created? This thing is...
so this is a...
This is a heart with different... And each of these was printed separately?
Yep, and then you put it all together.
And you put them together with like screws.
Yep. Actually, extra hardware from.
How in the world is this designed?
So there's a program called OpenSCAD, which is an open parametric modeling system. And the way it works is it's scripting. It's 3D modeling for programmers. And what the guy who designed this took a heart model, and he made a gear script that basically combines the two, and it comes out like that.
Oh, that's cool.
So this is something you could take. We took Colbert's head when we were on Colbert, and we made it like this by just taking the same script and doing it that way.
So you've got increasingly, I guess, I don't know if the camera can see this, but increasingly more precise than, like this has gotten much finer than I think it used to, right?
I was looking at some of our early prints, and I was a little bit like, you know, it was amazing that we were able to get those prints out, 2.5 years ago, but things are a lot better now.
And it's like Lego strength?
Yeah.